with you in the Midlands, BBC Radio.
Well, our very, very special guest on the Record Collector tonight, from Memphis, I should say, is Sonny Burgess. Welcome to the programme, Sonny.
Okay, Chris, thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here with you and Mike.
Great. Can I ask you straight away if you could clear up a point for my own personal information? I've got quite a few of your records, and I've been reading the sleeve notes on the back, and the one on your compilation of Razorback records said that you come from Newport and you were born 1929. Your Sun Sessions discography says 1931. Could you clear up that and tell me, was it Newport and what year?
Okay, it was Newport, Arkansas. That's where I still live, and it was 1931.
Now, how did you get into the music business? I mean, I don't know too much about Arkansas, the groups, the people that were around. Who was there and who influenced you?
Well, we were close to Memphis, and so we heard Memphis radio. And I had a couple of friends in school that we played, had us a little band and played like everybody else starts. And we did dances. We played dances there in the small clubs in Arkansas, which we have nightclubs that people go to. And that's how we got started playing, as we played clubs.
Would that have been people like Bobby Crawford?
No, it was Kern Kennedy, Russ Smith, Joe Lewis, the actual Pacers. Bobby came on later. He was not one of the first Pacers. He was the guy that came on when we broke up, when the Pacers broke up. And Jack and Joe went with Twitty, then Russ went with Jerry Lee. We picked up Bobby, and we just kept the name. But as far as the original Pacers, we broke up in '57.
Let's move to the period at which were your first recordings in Memphis, and that would be in Union Avenue. That would be with Sam Phillips.
Right.
And the first track there was Red-Headed Woman and We Want a Boogie. Right. Which many rockabilly fans claim to be the greatest rockabilly record of all time, certainly one of the wildest cuts of all time. Wasn't issued as a single in this country, though it did sell something like about 90,000 copies in the southern states or thereabouts when it first came out.
Right. Yeah.
Have I got my facts right?
Yeah, they're about as right as I know them.
Okay. How did the association with Sun start for you? I mean, how did you meet Sam? Did you just roll up? You were a farmer, weren't you?
Right, I grew up on a farm. Well, we were playing music, like I told Chris, we were playing music in the clubs, and Elvis came to Newport to play Porky's Rooftop when I first seen him. I went to Porky's Rooftop to see him. Had Scotty and Bill and himself, and, that just knocked us out. It was a new and different sound, so we decided then that we wanted to be on Sun Record because it began to make a little bit of a name for itself, see, with Elvis. And we worked up Redhead Woman and We Want a Boogie. We practiced on it for must have seemed like 6 months. And finally, we got up enough nerve. We went to Memphis to Sun Records and saw Sam, and he said, well, let's hear what you got. So we played him those 2 songs. Then he recorded us. He actually recorded our first session. And I'm not sure from there whether he did the second one or Jack Clemens took over. And Jack Clemens done the rest of them.
Now, Jack Clemens was an employee of Sun Records, wasn't he?
Right. He was the engineer. Ran the board.
Right.
Had a lot of good ideas. So he was a good songwriter and had a lot of good ideas.
And Riley, too, was an employee? Or not?
No, Riley just hung around there a lot. He was lived there, and he and those guys, that's the reason they played on so many songs, because they were there handy. When they need somebody to come in and need a musician, they were there.
What were the studios like? I mean, it's like when people talk about the Motown studios in Detroit, that the old building, the wood, had a certain sound to it. Now, we know that lots of things have actually happened to the Sun Records studios. It became a barber shop for a while and a coffee shop, and now it's been restored and so on. But was there anything special about the sound there? I mean, anything different, or with benefit of hindsight, thinking back, there was a certain sound that came out of those studios, or was it just the people that played in it?
No, it had a certain sound. You're right about that. The Sun sound was distinctive. I think it was actually Sam Phillips that he created that sound himself. It was a mixture of country and rhythm and blues, which he done a lot of rhythm and blues before he got into the rockabilly, or rock and roll, what we call it. And I actually think it was Sam. I don't think really the studio had that much to do with the sound that he got. I
want to talk about the rhythm and blues influence, but first I think we should introduce some of your music to our listener. And here is your very first Sun single, Red-Headed Woman. Well, that was Red-Headed Woman from the legendary Sonny Burgess, who, of course, is our special guest tonight on the Record Collectors.
Sam Phillips had quite, as we mentioned earlier on, a lot of work to do with rhythm and blues and the blues music. Later on, some of the artists, I mean, even people like Booker T and his group were the session musicians there. Did Sam kind of run it as two separate sections where possibly, shall we say, the blues and the black people recorded together, or was there any intermixing where you might have had some of their drummers, like was it Jackson or Duck Dunn or people like that, recording with the white people?
Jackson was drummer. Duck Dunn was the bassman.
Bass, yeah.
I don't I don't remember anything about it because with the Pacers we had our own complete group, so we did all of our own. When we were together, we did all of our own records with Son. So I couldn't really tell you because from there, we were working a lot. And we weren't there actually to see somebody else record. I don't think we ever seen anybody else record it, Son.
You did record with another Son artist. We mentioned earlier Billy Lee Riley, who
Right.
actually did come from Fernwood Records.
That's right,
with,
he did.
Clements. How did you actually team up with him to do? Was it basically instrumentals?
We went to the studio that day to cut they call and say, well, it's time to cut something. So we go over to try and do something. So we do this song and that song, and Jack says, well, let's try something else. And finally it came down. We didn't come up with anything that we liked. He said, let's do an instrumental. And there was an instrumental out at that time, and somebody on the West Coast had cut. It has a name similar to Itchy. I cannot remember the name of it. Y'all probably remember it.
And you cut a track called Thunderbird.
And yeah, we did Thunderbird on that, and Riley was there, so we got it. We thought, well, that'll be great. We had two guitars on that, actually. J.C. Cawhorn and I played twin guitars on that.
Well, before the session tonight, I'll just tell you, in fact, because you're on this tour with DJ Fontana, so we're recording this at the same time that DJ show, you probably heard the DJ interview the other week, and when DJ came in here, we were actually playing your track Thunderbird, and it stands up well, that track, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's a good, I liked it. We were drinking. John Ray and Riley and I got to drinking. The day wears on, you get tired of recording.
Well, I heard things, Sonny, that you were virtually teetotal in your early.
I was.
But it soon changed.
Well, no, not really. I still don't drink.
But you did.
That day we drank some Thunderbird wine, which was right around the corner. And that's, we look at the bottle and say, what we're going to call the record? And we look at the bottle and it's sitting there and says Thunderbird. That was as good a name to come up with as any.
Could we talk about some of the session men? I mean, you mentioned earlier something like you had your own group, but I believed you used, for some of your sessions, was it Jimmy Van Eaton on drums?
Van Eaton did one set with us. That was after we'd broken up. That was in 58, I believe it was, 58 or 59. Yeah, he did one thing with us. But we did a lot of... See, what you got to remember is, like Billy Riley's Little Green Men, Van Eaton played with them. We'd play clubs like we were on one side of the street, they were on the other side. So we all knew each other. It was an intermingled thing. We just didn't simply spend that much time at Sun Studio. We'd see them. We'd do shows together.
Was Jack Nance your drummer at one time? Was it Jack Nance?
Jack was a trumpet player.
Trumpet player. Did he play with the Jackson 5?
He toured with the Jackson 5. He was a road manager.
That's right.
Right.
I knew there was a connection.
He was a road manager.
Right. So it's a small world, really, isn't it, when you think about it? Did you actually get to meet many of the other artists of Sun? Did you actually appear on any of their other records?
A lot of them, like Perkins. We toured with Perkins. We toured with Cash. We did most of our work with Cash. Met Presley 3 times when he'd come to Newport. And
you actually met him in the famous clothes store one time.
Oh, you're right, at Lansky's. That was in 58 or 59 when he was in the Army.
Did you see, I mean, you were a pretty wild dresser from some of the pictures I've seen. And there's a story. There's a story about... I mean, we had a guy in Britain around about 59, 60 who used to have red hair called Wee Willie Harris.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I heard a story that way before then, that you had red hair too. I mean, is that true or false?
Yeah, when 57, we were going to California, and anyway, to make a story short, there was a guy that I was reading this book about. I used to read a lot, and he had white hair. He was a young guy, but he had white hair, so I decided I'm going to make my hair white. And it was black then. Make my hair white. Now it's white. Anyway, I get me some peroxide, and I put it on my hair, and it turned it red. So the red hair lasted till my hair about 3 weeks for the hair to grow out.
Who was with you on that tour? Was it Roy Orbison?
Orbison was with us. That's where the Wink Pineapple and the Red Clown came up.
Oh yeah,
out in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
The Wink Pineapple and the Red Clown.
Yeah, that's where
What was Orbison like as a person?
I really liked him. He's a quiet person, but he's got a dry sense of humor, kind of an English sense of humor. But he's a great guy. I really liked him.
How do you think people like Orbison, maybe yourself, Warren Smith, a lot of other artists felt...
Billy Lee Riley.
Yeah. Possibly because Phillips always seemed, through the kind of press, to give the impression that he was basically promoting a small number of artists. I mean, if you ask people to name the Sun artists, they'll say Elvis, Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Orbison. The others, they
Johnny
seem,
Cash.
Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Most of the others seem to be forgotten. Did you feel there was a divide between, say, it's happened in places like Motown, where certain artists were pushed, the others were just kept recording to keep them happy? Was there a kind of a divide there?
Well, I didn't really feel that. We talked a little bit about that earlier. I think that simply that Sam didn't have the people, which there's only 3 people I remember, him, Sally, and Jack. And Judd done a little work for him, but he didn't have the people or the money to really promote maybe, which at that time was about 8 of us.
I mean, one looks at the when he sold Elvis's contract for $40,000, which in modern day money is not a fortune, but in $40,000 30 years ago was a fortune.
Right.
I mean, you could buy an awful lot for $40,000, and Jerry Lee Lewis was having multi-million record sales, as was Johnny Cash, and I'm just saying it seems strange that when you guys coming on 57, 58 with what appeared to be, I've been involved with running a record label, a reasonably, I mean, I would have liked the cash flow situation that was happening there. I mean, it seems strange that wasn't more money promoted. I mean, you had a follow-up record, and I'm getting cross now because I've got the Red-Headed Woman, and the next record, was it Restless?
Restless, yeah.
Sorry, I knew it was coming to me. And Restless is one hell of a track. But it didn't get much promotion, did it?
Well, it didn't get any, but what happened on that song, I don't know what happened, but anyway, Sam told us when it had been out about 2 months, Sam Phillips told us right there at Sunray, he said he thought it was going to be bigger than Blue Suede Shoes. And
Yeah.
it simply quit.
Yeah, I don't think we want to let you. We really want to sort of really find out what really was happening in Sun, because Sun, to the people in Britain anyway, it's like talking about Spectre. It's like the Apple label. It's like you talk about certain things about the early Beatles, and you talk about Phil Spector, Motown, and Sun Records. And there are certain things which have a magic to millions, as it were. I mean, the people want to eat that magic. They want to see what it was really about. And when you look at it very, very closely, you were there. It was a handful of people operating really what was a mega operation as such, wasn't it? Something like probably how Motown was in Detroit at the very beginning.
Well, that's true, but see, you got to remember that Sun Record was actually regional. It was the southern states that it was really big in.
Right.
See, Elvis wasn't big all over the United States until he got on the national TV, till RCA, but he was big, he was super big there in the South. So I think that's what fools a lot of people, is it really wasn't that big a market that we were, and there's not too many people down south.
Well, Shelby Singleton bought Sun Records out, didn't he?
He bought everything that Sam, I guess, would sell him.
That's right, and then the distribution. But Sun Records were distributed to some northern cities, weren't they? Some Sun stuff got up to New York.
Some of them would, because we found out, I'm playing with the Sun Rhythm section now, and we were in Boston back before the first of the year, and a girl up there that told me that Redhead Woman was #1 on the charts in Boston, and we didn't know it. That was 30 years later. I found out #1. We never did know it. See?
Did you get the royalties from it though?
Yeah, I got the royalties.
That's what counts.
What would you say were the major labels in the South, possibly in Memphis, that would have been competitors to Sun?
I don't think there's really anybody for the rock and roll. It's called rock and roll. It wasn't rockabilly. I don't know where the term came from, but I don't think to me there really wasn't anybody that compared with them for Sun. That's why we wanted. There was labels at Nashville and places like that, the biggies, but they didn't get that sound that we liked.
Now, did you ever possibly see something like Satellite as a rival? That was a Memphis label.
Yeah.
One or two rock and roll.
Meteor, wasn't it?
Meteor. Yeah, that was. Didn't Sam own though? Didn't he own Meteor?
I thought he
Was that
shares
Perkins' his first?
Yeah, you're right.
That Sam owned that.
About the other guys that around you at that time, Carl Perkins and John. I mean, you played a long tour with John Cash, didn't you?
Right.
With Johnny Cash.
2 years. We were fronted for him.
And any tales you can tell of those days, those early days of rock and roll on the road in the 50s?
Well, Perkins used to. We did a deal with him in Jackson, Tennessee, where he's born. It was a homecoming thing for him. That's when Blue Suede Shoes hit the million. Anyway, the Pacer and I played a show there with him, and he came on stage at the end of it and played with us. And he throws a pair of his Blue Suede Shoes out in the audience, which nowadays would create a riot, if he threw a pair of those things out in the audience. Well, it did there that night. I don't remember who got them, but And Cash was really a nice guy. I liked working for Cash. He was one of the nice guys. But Perkins probably the nicest guy.
Yeah, I've never met Carl Perkins, but I've got a lot of his records, of course.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Can I move on from Sun and ask where you went from Sun Records?
Well, we started playing, at that time we were playing a club called Jarvis's in Newport, Arkansas. And that's when I had the Kings 4. And we played like 4 nights a week in this club. And we'd go down and we'd say, well, we need some kind of record for playing around here to help us,
Is that Bobby Crawford?
Bobby Crawford. See?
Crawford, sorry.
Yeah. And Bobby had the Razorback thing. He didn't own it. He was just simply in it with another guy that had the money. And we could go down there and we'd cut something, see, and then we'd put it out and sell them off the bandstand.
Sorry, Chris.
Sorry, Matt, I was just going to say, talking about Razorback, you did do a couple of things. I have an album called This Is Razorback Records, rock and roll. You did Fraulein and Odessa. Did you do any more things for them?
Not that I remember. I believe those. Most of the other things we've done, we went to Roland Jane's studio, Sonic Studios there in Memphis, and he'd cut them, and he had 2 or 3 label names. He'd put them out on those labels.
Yep. What about the other artists on Razorback, such as Teddy Riddell, Rick Durham, Jimmy Luke? Did you ever come across any of those?
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Luke took, with the Pacers, he took my place when I went with Twitty.
Yeah. What about any of the others?
Teddy Riddell, he still lives. In fact, I talked to him back before Christmas. He's coming over here now in, I don't know about London, but he's coming to the Rock and Roll Festival in Holland in April.
I want to talk about those Razorback sessions in some detail, but I don't want to get out of sequence. I want to play a track from the Razorback sessions, but before I get there, I want to play that instrumental of Thunderbird. Let's play it right now.
Okay.
So there we have Thunderbird from the legendary Sonny Burgess, who's our special guest tonight on The Record Collectors with your gruesome twosome. That's Mike Adams and Chris Savory. Now, moving on from the Sun period, let's talk about a little bit more about the Razorback sessions as Chris started moving it to just before Thunderbird.
Yes, tell us a little bit about the label, distribution. How successful was it?
Well, I don't think it was successful at all. It came about, they did a song on the University of Arkansas Razorbacks, which is called the Razorbacks. So that's how it got the name, the Razorback label. And they've done this song, some guy did, about Arkansas playing Texas, the short, tall Texaners, short squash Texan or something like that. I don't remember the name of it now. But anyway, and that's kind of where it got started. And then Crawford and them did some songs on it, and
those tours that Pitt used to set off at with Cash and with Roy Orbison and these legendary figures now, multi-millionaires and their own private jets and everything else. But I heard a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that you used to somehow meet in some sort of like hotel or bar in Waco in Texas. Usually, was it Waco? Am I saying it right?
Waco.
Waco, okay. Waco in Texas, and that used to be the starting off point for a lot of the tours. You sort of meet in this sort of kind of place in Waco, and that would be the starting point for the tours. And you'd almost like get a convoy going, and off the tour would go. Was there any truth in that?
Yes, there was, because Bob Neal, managed Johnny Cash at that time. That was after he'd sold Elvis, so he had Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee, and he'd call and say, I've got a tour, and most of the tours were out west that we'd done, with Texas, California, and most of our work with the.
So you head out to Waco. Where do you used to meet in a bar or hotel there, or what in Waco?
Any place we'd decide on, but Orbison usually rode with us. At that time he didn't have a band. We backed him on stage too.
What were the sort of stuff? I mean, there's some rockabilly stuff by Roy Orbison, which is a Hillybilly Rock EP, which is very collectible here. I mean, most people know Orbie from Only the Lonely onwards,
right? On Monument.
But he was cutting some very good tracks, rock and roll tracks.
Great stuff. Ooby Dooby.
Ooby Dooby, yes. What was he actually doing when he was out on the stage, away from the studios, on the road with you? What was Obi singing then? What kind of numbers was he doing? Was he doing any of those songs like Claudette and?
He did Claudette for us because he had written it and pitched it to the Everly Brothers, and they recorded it. We'd sit around and talk and sleep. That's mostly all. And play guitar. Roy's a good guitar player, so we'd sit around and we'd say, well, how do you play this lick? And we'd sit around, fiddle around the guitars. But one thing happened with him was so funny, talking about Ooby Dooby. We was up in Michigan at Kellogg up in the Battle Creek, and he showed me, this guy came backstage and had a little piece of a coat on a piece of paper. Some guy was selling for $1. Orbison had been up there about 6 months before on Ooby Dooby, and they had torn this coat off of him. And he'd bought it Lansky. And some guy got part of the coat and was selling these little inch squares for $1 a piece.
What's your favorite record of everything you've ever cut, other than the ones we've already played?
All my favorite records. There's one missing that has never shown up. Hopefully it will in this new batch. They've just found 3 new reels of stuff that was unmarked.
Is this in Sun?
Yeah, it's on in the Sun stuff. It was According to My Heart, which was a big hit for Jim Reeves.
Well, we haven't got that at present, but I'll have a word with Charlie Records, and if I can get a hold of a copy, I will play it. But I would like, in fact, to borrow from Chris, from his Razorback record album, a track from that. Anything that you like off that album?
Odessa, that was one of my favorites.
Okay.
Ronnie Hawkins recorded that, you know.
We know that well, and here is your version of it, Sonny.
Well, that was Odessa there, written actually, I believe, by Ronnie Hawkins as well. We've discussed, Sonny, very much the 50s music. What about the next 2, virtually 3 decades? We've got the 60s, the 70s, and we're virtually at the end of the 80s. What happened?
Okay, in the 60s, we had the group called the Kings Four, which was some other guys that I played with. Gene Grant, Bobby Nelson played it. We had the organ. We did the whole Stax sound, the Motown sound. When we could play, we had the piano and every whole bit. We were doing anything that anybody else. We had a real good group there, had a good show group. Not as good as the Pacer, but good.
When are we likely to see you in the country again? There's been a flying visit to here. You've done Europe in 2 days. We've grabbed you as you've gone by. You mentioned something about coming back to Britain later in the spring. Wembley? No,
DJ's coming back to Wembley with the Jordanaires to do. What we're trying to do is get our group, the Sun Rhythm section over here, to do maybe a 2-week tour or something like that. It may be in October when the festivals all go on.
Well, you get a big warm welcome from the record collectors, and of course, frankly, the joy which your music has given to millions and millions of people in this country. The fact that you didn't get a lot of your records released earlier on, I'm very grateful actually to Charlie Records and to the Sun back catalogue for putting out some of this great music from the halcyon days of rock and roll. We're going out with Restless, and Restless because, quite frankly, we're restless for more of your music. Sonny Burgess, thank you very much for being a guest on the Record Collectors.
Thank you, Mike and Chris. Really appreciate it, and hope to see you again.